Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Notre Dame Recruiting Mailbag. I'm Tom Loy with IrishIllustrated.com and 24/7 Sports. The first one went over well, so let's just get right into the second edition. First question comes from Mexican Irish. If you were a betting man, which class would you bet would be higher ranked, the 23 group headed to Notre Dame or the 24 class? I do think Notre Dame has a chance to land a top 5 class in 23. They've got some dudes coming, and there's potentially some more on the way. They got to land some big fish, but I think that the loss of Keon Keeley definitely hurts. I believe that landing a top tier, top flight quarterback, a top 100, top 50 talent would pay off in a big way in terms of the recruiting rankings. So as it stands right now, I'm going to give this slight edge to 24 because right now they have five-star quarterback C.J. Carr committed. They've made some great headway along the way with some really top talent across the country. So I'm going to give the edge to 24, but I'm absolutely not ruling things out in 23. All in all, it's a really good time to be a Notre Dame recruiting fan under Marcus Freeman, because there's some great things happening in both classes and in the future for Fighting Irish recruiting. And Jeffers, my question is, why do you got to bum me out with that Mylan Graham crystal ball? He's talking about the four-star receiver in the class of 2024, an Indiana kid. I have him crystal ball to land at Ohio State. Notre Dame offered. They've been in play. I'm not ruling them out in this one, no question about it. There's a lot of interest in Notre Dame. I think he likes them a great deal, but as it stands right now, I like the Buckeyes. He was just in Columbus for the Ohio State game over the weekend, and he did watch Notre Dame up close firsthand, and he liked what he saw from that group. But it's hard to bet against Brian Hartline when it comes to top receiver targets, and he is one of those for the Buckeyes. So right now I like Ohio State, but there's plenty of interest in Notre Dame and a long way to go. He's got other interest in schools like Miami, Florida, Florida State, Alabama. He's got plenty of interest, and he doesn't look like he's making a decision anytime soon. So we'll see what happens there. Noah H4, if Keeley wanted back in the class at any point, would Indy accept? Yes, no question about it. I know that there's some love lost along the way, and they're definitely frustrated with how things played out, and they feel a little hurt about it and about how the process played out. But Keon Keeley is a difference maker, a five-star prospect, one of the best in the country. In my opinion, he might actually be the #1 overall player in the country. So I think he's a guy you go after, you kind of bite the bullet, and if he gives you a call, you answer that phone call. So I don't expect it to happen. I don't think that it's going to work out this way for Notre Dame. As of right now, I like Ohio State and Alabama. I like their chances a little bit better, especially Alabama. But right now, if he calls Marcus Freeman, I surely will bet that he would answer the phone call from Keon Keeley. Sean Murphy 2000. How much do you think the freshman trio of Tobias Merriweather, Eli Raridan, and Holden Stays play? Do you believe that they can add a lot to the offense? I do. But I also trust the judgment of Tommy Rees, Chancey Stuckey, Jared Parker, and those guys. Tobias Merriweather is a receiver. Eli Raridan and Holden Stays are both tight ends. I definitely think that they will help the offense a ton in the future. And it's very possible that they help the offense a great deal down the stretch throughout the season. If we're looking down the road and we're talking about Clemson games and USC and things like that, these are difference makers. These are very, very talented players and guys that I do believe could help right now if called upon, especially with Marshall this Saturday, Cal next week, 2 games that I believe Notre Dame can win comfortably. You need some guys like that on the field because you want to see what they can do. And I personally I would have liked to see Tobias Merriweather against Ohio State, especially when we were talking about the one-on-one opportunities. You want guys that can win those 50-50 balls, and a guy like Tobias Merriweather absolutely can. So I'd like to see them play. I'd like to see them play more this weekend and see what they can do. But, that's why Tommy Rees and Marcus Freeman make the big bucks. They make those decisions. They're with these guys all day long, every day. So if they're not playing yet, there's a reason for it. But I would expect them to all see the field this weekend against Marshall. BL Casburn, what percentage chance do you have of us getting back in with Keon Keeley? Kind of touched on him a little bit already. My guess would be that he ends up elsewhere. I don't really like dealing with percentages, So I'm not giving Notre Dame a great chance in this one. My crystal ball is on Alabama. That's the school I've been told is a team to beat from day one of his decommitment from Notre Dame, and really, in the weeks leading up to it, that was where all the smoke was. So, like I said, if he contacts Marcus Freeman, no question he answers the phone. But right now I have Keeley headed elsewhere. Looks like KJM06D is Jeremiah Love, the 4-star running back receiver, visiting anywhere else after he visits South Bend this upcoming weekend. There's some chatter about potentially getting out to Oregon. There's some chatter about him getting back to A&M. There's even some smoke about Missouri. I'm not ready to crystal ball him quite yet to Notre Dame. I know that there's been a lot of chatter, a lot of smoke, a lot of buzz about Notre Dame heading into this visit, and it's key that he's getting both of his parents. I want to say his grandmother as well is joining him on the trip this weekend to Notre Dame. That's massive. I mean, this is a very talented player, a guy that fits into that Chris Tyree role, a guy that can play running back, receiver, really be used all over the field. Some schools even like him in the secondary, but I know Notre Dame is all in about him as a receiver slash running back. They want him on that side of the ball. So this is going to be a big weekend. But regarding any visits beyond this weekend, I think he's going to know come Sunday, come Saturday, whether he really wants to visit anywhere else or he makes a decision and shuts it down. If he makes a decision right away, you got to like Notre Dame's chances. But stay locked to IrishIllustrated.com all weekend long. We'll have a ton of buzz coming out of Love's visit and all the other targets and commits that are visiting this weekend. PA Irish 5. Ohio State obviously put on a huge display for recruits during the Notre Dame game with celebrities, performers, and alumni all over. What do you anticipate Notre Dame's recruiting weekend against Clemson to look like? It's going to be similar, but I don't expect, LeBron James to be there. That was pretty big for Ohio State. Talk about buzz and the pop when he walked into the stadium. It was pretty awesome. I was pretty happy to get a nice shot of him as he was kind of hanging out with Bronny and a couple other guys. But I think it's going to be a great weekend for Notre Dame fans when Clemson comes to town. I think there's going to be a ton of buzz. They're going to try to get all the commits there, any remaining top targets they would love to get on campus. Anybody they can add to the class, they're going to try to get them there as well. So it'll be a big weekend for 24. Notre Dame's almost done in 23. So it's going to be a big weekend for 24. They're going to try to get a bunch of unofficial visitors on campus and really get things going. But in terms of the celebrity status and the pop and the buzz when it comes to that, it's not going to look the same. But I think all in all for Notre Dame, I think their key is to get the recruits on campus, getting them on campus together, bonding, building that camaraderie, that bond, and that's a little bit more important than having a celebrity there. Scott F5, do you predict Notre Dame focuses on the portal for wide receiver next year? The depth chart will remain thin, and there's no guarantee the 23 incoming freshmen will contribute. It's fair. I think they're going to focus on the portal every cycle. Just depends on if they see a guy that fits, if there's a guy that checks the academic boxes, and then a guy that they just truly want. They're always going to watch the portal. They're always going to have people focusing on it at all positions, not just receiver. So I do think they're going to hit it. I think they're going to need to hit it hard in terms of just landing a couple guys across the board. I think that whether they focus on wide receiver is going to really play a factor of how things play out with 23 recruiting, maybe looking at 24, and then also just obviously the on-field production that we see out of this group. They're going to need more than they had against Ohio State at the wide receiver position, and I think that all starts this weekend against Marshall, and they will. They'll get more production there. So I think people might be singing a different tune come season's end about how hard they need to hit the portal at the wide receiver position, but right now I know that there's a lot of freak out moments with the lack of production at the wide receiver position against Ohio State. So definitely think they're going to hit the portal for at least a guy next year, but right now I don't think people need to be freaking out too much. B. Plents, 1189. Do you think Notre Dame finds an edge replacement for Keon Keeley in the 23 class, or do you think it's more likely for Notre Dame to take 2 Viper prospects in 2024? Look, the guys that we talked about for weeks have not changed. You're still looking at Oregon commit Jaden Moore. You're looking at the 2 Tennessee commits in Shandavian Bradley and Caleb Herring, and you're looking at 5-star Samuel Mpemba. Moore was the guy they offered right before he committed to Oregon. So he had that opportunity on the table, but I also think he did a good job of locking in his spot with Oregon and kind of shutting down his recruitment at that point. But I know Notre Dame's still been in communication. They would love for things to work out on that front and for him to show some interest moving forward. The Tennessee commits in Bradley and Herring, not a ton of traction there. They're kind of more hopeful than optimistic at this point. They would love for those guys to get on campus, but not a ton of traction there. Samuel Mpemba has said that he's going to take a visit to Notre Dame for the Clemson game for his official visit. That would obviously be massive because a lot of the trend nationally has been in favor of Georgia, and rightfully so. Obviously, everybody knows what kind of defense they run under Kirby Smart. So that would be a long shot land, in my opinion. I don't think he's a guy that Notre Dame fans should be counting on to land in South Bend with the Fighting Irish, but crazier things have happened. They're going to do what they can. But right now, I know Notre Dame's keeping it pretty quiet what they're doing behind the scenes, but they're working hard, man. They are trying to land some new names. They're looking at early senior season footage. They're scouring the globe, man. They are working hard. And then if they can find a good candidate to flip, then they'll do that as well. B. Plent's 1189. Who would you like to see in a four-man wide receiver haul for Notre Dame in the class of 2024 if Mylan Graham heads to Ohio State, which has been projected by me on the 24/7 Sports Crystal Ball? My realistic four would be Cam Williams, the four-star receiver who's already committed, and I'd probably add Ryan Wingo, Burdell Richardson, and Jeremiah McClellan at this point. I wouldn't say any of those guys are slam dunks, but they've all been on campus. They all have a great relationship with the coaching staff. Chancey Stuckey, Tommy Rees are doing a very good job there. They all have nothing but respect and admiration for Marcus Freeman and what he's doing with the program. So I'd say those are probably your best bets in terms of guys that I think are realistic, guys that I think Notre Dame absolutely can land. We're talking about great fits and guys that I think would be a couple potential difference makers in that group. That foursome right there, I don't think there would be a single Notre Dame fan that would be all that bummed if Williams, Wingo, Richardson, McClellan all landed in South Bend. Baby Buster, big picture question on quarterback recruiting. Can Notre Dame land elite quarterbacks in back-to-back classes like other powerhouse programs have done in the past? The easy answer is yes. I think that's something they're trying to do. I think it's something they can do. It just kind of depends on what you classify as elite. Was Tyler Buchner elite in your opinion? Is Steve Angeli an Under Armour All-American? Is he elite in your opinion? I know the majority are going to say no, maybe even to both, because people are just, they can't shake what they saw with Tyler Buchner when it comes to the Elite 11 performance, even though he was absolutely dominant and a rock star as a high school football player. A lot of people can't shake what they saw in essentially a passing camp that doesn't matter. I think we all saw a lot out of Tyler Buchner against Ohio State. He threw the ball well. He got the ball out of his hand quickly. He showed poise in the pocket. He showed toughness. He showed the things that I think some people were worried about. He showed that tenfold. I mean, he looked really good against Ohio State. Didn't really get a ton of opportunities to show what he can do. I've said it all week long. It's time to let him cook. It's time to let him eat. I want to see what he can do with his arm, his legs against Marshall, and really see if Notre Dame landed the kid that I projected as a five-star coming out of high school. So, but back to your question, just overall, I definitely think they can, but I think it all starts this weekend. You want to have a guy, and not to basically interject myself, but C.J. Carr, if he was to reclassify, again, we're thinking that's another elite talent that's going to come. People like Steve Angeli, I know a lot of people look at the rankings, and some had him as a 3-star, some had him as a 4-star. I like the kid. I think he's the best pure passer in the room right now at Notre Dame. I think he's got a ton of talent, and people writing him off. Is he Drew Aller? No, I don't think so. I think Drew was one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in the country last year, and Notre Dame had a shot. They finished runner-up to Penn State. But anybody just sleeping on Steve is sadly mistaken. I think he's a terrific talent he's gonna be tough to beat out. And if he does, that just means that C.J. Carr was exactly what everybody was hoping for. But let's not write this kid off, man. Steve can throw it, and like I said, I think he's the best pure passer in the room. So they absolutely can do it. Tommy Rees is working hard. Marcus Freeman is working hard. He's got his hands on the quarterbacks with as recruits. So, long answer, long. I definitely think it's possible. ND Yinzer. What do you think Notre Dame has left to show Jeremiah Love this weekend? Is there anything Love is left looking to seek with this visit, in your opinion? I wouldn't say that there's a ton to show him. I think it's key that his mom's coming to campus. She's, to my knowledge, never been there, hasn't really been involved in the process as much as his dad has been. And they're going to lay out the red carpet, man. They are going to do all they can to make sure everybody leaves extremely impressed, with that need to want to shut down their recruitment and move forward and make a decision. Now, if he goes back to A&M, that's always been my hesitation with why I haven't crystal balled him to Notre Dame. I have said for a while that I thought it was a two-team race between A&M and Notre Dame. And when projecting, I've kind of given the Aggies the edge coming out of the back-to-back visits he took to College Station. Now, Notre Dame's gaining confidence in this front. So I've heard enough from Notre Dame to make me want to crystal ball him. But in the meantime, A&M hasn't lost a ton of confidence either. So they absolutely think that they can land him. They think he'll be back on campus. So this visit's going to be massive. For Notre Dame's sake, they need him to visit, shut it down, want to make a decision, and I like Notre Dame's chances at that point. Irish Will 23. Do you see the results of last weekend having a positive, negative, or no impact on current and prospective class of 23 commits? I think that it's going to hurt Notre Dame's chances a little bit with some of the guys. They wanted, especially the offensive recruits. The Notre Dame's offense didn't do a ton last weekend to really give you a lot of excitement, buzz, and the pop that some of the guys wanted to see, especially out of Tyler Buchner. It was 1 week. It was one start. The guys who paid a lot of attention, like for example, I spoke to Ryan Wingo, and he sees the potential of the offense. He sees that there's a ton of talent there with Tyler Buchner, and he knows the future is bright with him and CJ Carr, especially because those guys have a great relationship. So I don't see the game having a huge impact. I think if anything, I think it would be probably more of a positive big picture impact because of the fact that everybody saw the 17-point underdog thing and everybody expected a blowout, and it wasn't that at all, and everybody saw that Notre Dame actually could have won that game. So all in all, I think it made more of a positive than a negative, but it's all about the future. One game at a time, like Marcus Freeman always says, but got to go 1-0 this weekend. But if Notre Dame can run the table, finish 11-1, maybe even 10-2 with a close loss somewhere along the way, Clemson, USC, just show that they're really one of the five best teams in the country. That's what it's about, and that's going to help with recruiting. RJ Brun 17. How will potential wide receiver commits look at the lack of production against Ohio State? Kind of touched on it a little bit. They need to do more. They need to do more fast. I'd like to see that against Marshall. I expect it against Marshall. I expected it against Cal and North Carolina. I think things are going to be much better moving forward because I think they're going to, allow Tyler Buchner to do what he does best and really show off that he's a guy to watch in the future for Notre Dame at the quarterback position and a guy that is a tremendous playmaker and a guy that can throw the ball with anybody. I really do think we're going to see a much different Tyler Buchner, and which involves the game plan this weekend against Marshall. Mario Kart God, do you still think it's more likely than not that CJ Carr reclassifies? And when do you expect we'll hear a decision on that front? I do. I think CJ Carr will reclassify. That's where if I had a crystal ball pick in, that's what it would be on, but it's not a done deal. Behind the scenes, CJ Carr is very much focused on his team. That is priority number one. Saline High School, his teammates, winning the rest of their games this year, competing for a state title. That is all he's focused on right now. The other stuff will play out as it will. Academically, he's putting himself in position to reclassify if he wants to, but a final decision hasn't been made on that. Notre Dame would be thrilled if he did it. They want that kid on campus as soon as possible. Personally, knowing that kid from a mental perspective, from a physical perspective, I know he's still lean, but he is such a pure passer, such a talented player, and mentally he's so strong. I mean, this kid has been through a lot, and he is very much ready for the college level, and I think his family would be on board with that. So, again, I think it happens. I'm not ready to say it's a done deal because it's not, but stay tuned to Irish Illustrated. We'll probably know in the next couple of weeks, at least behind the scenes, whether it's going to happen. But again, nobody's just necessarily in a rush. They're going to be open with if tomorrow a kid wanted to flip to Notre Dame in the 23 class, they would be very much open with that young man about the process with CJ Carr and how that may work out. They're not going to lie to kids. That's not how Marcus Freeman, Tommy Rees, it's not how they do things. So, but again, we're probably not going to know anytime soon, at least publicly, what he's going to be doing. Irish Deep Dish 88, how do you view the outcome of the Ohio State game from a recruiting perspective? Did Notre Dame show enough for recruits to say, hey, we're only a few difference makers away? Absolutely. Like I said before, it was a positive for Notre Dame. The fact that everybody's so bummed out, on the message boards at Irish Illustrated and really across the entire Notre Dame fan base, it's because they had a chance to win it, and they could have left with a W inside the shoe, which would have been massive. So if it was a beatdown or if they lost by more than 17 points, as many projected, I'm not sure people would be all that upset because of the fact that they kind of expected it. But now they know this Notre Dame team has a real defense. They have offensive potential. And despite Marcus Freeman starting out as the head coach at 0-1, because I'm not really counting the Oklahoma State game, it wasn't his staff. I really believe that there's so much excitement and buzz around this program that the close loss to Ohio State was a positive from a recruiting perspective. ND college football royalty. After watching the Notre Dame Ohio State game, what is your assessment of ND's overall talent level? Which positions have more or less talent than you expected? I think this Notre Dame team can play with anybody in the country. I would like to see a little bit more than just the one game sample for both teams because it left a lot of questions. Is Notre Dame's defense as real as they looked? Is Notre Dame's offense as kind of vanilla as they looked? I think that, Ohio State, was their offense not as good as everybody expected? Was their defense better than most people thought? Again, we need more than one game as a sample size, but just, my overall take, I think that Notre Dame's defense is going to be that good all year long. I think they showed a lot of poise and a lot of promise in that game. I think Notre Dame's offense is going to be better than what we saw against Ohio State, which is obviously a good thing. But overall, I think that this team is very talented. It's as talented as really any in the country. I don't think they would beat Alabama. I don't think they would beat Georgia head to head. I think they can beat Clemson. There's a lot of teams they can beat. There's a lot more teams they can beat than that they would lose to in a head-to-head matchup. I think if they were to meet in the college football playoff against Ohio State 11, 12 weeks from now, I think it would be another close game that I think that the point spread would be different. And I think that Notre Dame is a team that could beat Ohio State on any given Saturday. So they're just as talented as any team in the country. Like I said, maybe not named Alabama and Georgia right now. They've been recruiting at a great level with those two teams. So, but Notre Dame is doing exactly that moving forward, and this future is bright for Notre Dame football. Maddie Hebbs 14. What do you think about rotating Brandon Joseph out for the likes of Houston Griffith? I think Brandon Joseph is a tremendous playmaker on the back end of the defense. He is a fearless hitter. He showed that against Jackson Smith-Njigba. He's got a nasty streak about him, and he's obviously athletic enough and poised enough to be the punt returner on Notre Dame's special team. So play that kid as much as possible. I want to see as much Brandon Joseph as possible because he's gone after this year and he's going to head to the draft and could be a top 2-round pick. Some even think he could be a first-round pick if everything plays out the way some expect. So nothing against Houston Griffith. I just want to see as much Brandon Joseph as possible because he's one of the best players on the Notre Dame defense. Jay Mitchie. Buckeyes had 15 5-stars and Notre Dame had 2. How does Notre Dame start pulling 3 to 4 5-stars each year? Hard work, man. Just keep grinding, keep plugging away. Marcus Freeman is turning the corner from a recruiting perspective. They've done great things on that front. They need to get more involved when it comes to NIL and name, image, likeness. That's going to be a key for some kids, not everybody. Take Jeremey Love, for example. Unless my sources are completely wrong, I think there's probably a better package out there, immediate package from an A&M than there would be from Notre Dame. But you got to find the kids that are looking for the big picture. You got to find the kids that understand what Notre Dame can do for them now and in the future. The immediate money, I don't think Notre Dame's going to get involved in that front. And, right or wrong, I personally think it's right. I like how Notre Dame's handling everything from an NIL perspective. I don't like promising kids that haven't even stepped on the field this guaranteed money. I think it could hurt the locker room. And you don't want that. You don't want that at the college football level. So, how do they land more 5-stars? They have, in my opinion, they had at one time Keon Keeley committed, 5-star. Charles Jagasaw, in my opinion, probably a 5-star. Peyton Bowen, still committed, a 5-star in my opinion. That's 3 right there. They lost that on Keeley. They're in a battle with A&M in Oklahoma for Peyton Bowen. Charles Jagasaw looks locked in. So you need more to compete for national championships, no question. But they may not be 5 stars, but this class is very, very talented. It's loaded with guys that can play at a 5-star level, even though they're not ranked 5-star now. And that's most important. It's not about how they're ranked necessarily now, but it's about if they're 5 stars in college. And we'll see if that's how they project. But right now they're doing all the right things. They just got to close. Only a couple more left here. WM Coliff. How many top targets do you think are actually tracking Notre Dame's results on the field this season to make a decision, and what do you think might sway some of them? Is it big receiving yards, improved O-line play, just straight up winning? Obviously, the receiver targets are going to be watching the potential and the how the receivers are doing. Offensive line targets are going to watch the offensive line. I think winning helps. Job security for Marcus Freeman. They just want to see the direction of the program is exactly what he's selling these kids when he talks about we're going to take that next step and we're going to compete for national championships. That's been their message. They want to compete for national championships. They want to graduate guys. That message is never going to change for Notre Dame. But I don't know. For me, it feels a little bit more realistic that a national championship contender is there now in the next 5 years than it has been in the last couple years. I just feel like this is a group, this is a coaching staff, this is a team that has so much potential to really win it all. That's why I keep saying the future is bright. I really do believe that before he's done, Marcus Freeman will have gotten Notre Dame to a national championship, or at least right there in a close college football playoff loss. But I really do think that Marcus Freeman is the man to lead this team back to a national championship. So winning helps and cures everything. Head designs, how, if at all, do the months that are going by with CJ Carr's reclassification being up in the air affect 2024 quarterback recruiting? Has Notre Dame stopped all 2024 quarterback recruiting while he decides? For example, I caught up with Julian Sayin, 5-star quarterback from California. I asked if Notre Dame had been in touch. They have not, because right now CJ Carr is their quarterback in 2024. If he decides that he wants to reclassify and come in 2023, Julian Sayin will be the first call that they make, no question about it. They will start recruiting 2024 if CJ Carr reclassifies to the 23 class. Until that decision is made, there's just no point to reach out to the 24 guys. The ball's in their court. I don't think it's causing a problem. There's enough 24 quarterbacks out there that have a great deal of interest in Notre Dame, Julian Sayin being one of them. And I think that the timeline sets up nicely. I think CJ Carr's decision, what he's going to do, at least privately, will probably be known in the next couple of weeks, whether he's going to reclassify or not. If he doesn't, sticks in 2024, you continue to go hard on some 23s. Avery Johnson comes to mind as a guy I think that they can continue to try to flip from Kansas State. If he does reclassify, you get Julian on the horn and say, come to Notre Dame. You love this place. Come compete. You can go to Texas and follow Arch Manning and compete with him. You can come to Notre Dame. If you want to go to Michigan, I know that they're going to land a good 23 quarterback. So these guys, if they want a surefire, easy road to the quarterback position, to the field, they're probably not going to pick Notre Dame anyway. But I know Julian Sayin is a competitor. He is, he's really looking at the schools like Notre Dame and Texas and USC. They're all going to land good 23 quarterbacks. Obviously, I'm assuming that if CJ Carr reclassifies, then the kid's a competitor. So I definitely think that Notre Dame could get back into it quickly with Julian Sayin. He gets it. He's not dumb. He's a very smart kid. He understands that CJ was their guy in 24. Julian was right there as well. CJ jumped on the spot and filled it up quickly. One phone call could change a lot if he reclassifies. And then let me look here. We got NJ Irish 99. Do you think Styles should get more than 2 or 3 targets a game? Yes, and I think we'll see that this weekend against Marshall. Lorenzo Styles is a game wrecker, a guy that could do great things in the passing game, and if you can get him in swing passes, hand the ball off to him, he's a playmaker. Get him as many touches as possible. I love that kid with the ball in his hands, and I think when I was putting in my prediction and sending this in to Tim O'Malley for our staff picks that are going to come out on Friday, I have Styles catching a deep ball for a touchdown from Tyler Buckner. I have him eclipsing the 100-yard mark this weekend against Marshall. So I think we're going to start seeing a Lorenzo Styles that we're going to see the rest of the season. I expect him to get many more opportunities this weekend. Judge Arthur Vandelay, you've been on the beat for a while. I know you keep things professional, but do you become close with recruits over the course of their recruitment? Any former recruits you stay in touch with, either at ND or elsewhere? Yeah, I mean, you guys know I do a lot of stuff on a national perspective beyond just the Notre Dame market. Some of you guys don't seem to like that, but it's been great for my job. It's been great for getting scoop, and for me, love the relationships. But yeah, I mean, not to name drop, but there's plenty of guys that I stay in touch with at the NFL level, currently playing college football, obviously the high school kids. Yeah, I stay in touch with all these guys. I care about them. I want them to succeed, and I want them to really do well and flourish at the next level. I mean, just an example, Ian Book is a guy I've stayed in regular communication with. Great kid, great family. Just want a kid like that to be successful. But usually the guys that I've gotten to know for years that I've stayed in touch with are the ones that, treat me the same way now that they're in the league and beyond. I mean, there's plenty of guys I talk to that are no longer playing college football or NFL football. And like I said, that's the best part of the job is relationships. I enjoy the relationships with you guys as well, the fans. It's a lot of fun. Had a guy take a selfie with me that ran into me in Columbus, which was pretty cool. That was the first time for me. I thought he was asking me to take a picture of him. He actually wanted me to take a picture with them, which was pretty funny. But no, I mean, the relationships is what makes this job a lot of fun, both, like I said, with you guys and the players. So it's just the most satisfying, gratifying part of what I get to do for a living. Pin and poll. After watching Notre Dame on Saturday, what current 23 commits do you think have an opportunity to play and contribute right away? Kind of touched on this a little bit last week. If I were to, a couple guys that really stood out to me are Christian Gray, the cornerback, four-star cornerback, and Adon Schuler. I mean, those guys are day one contributors in my opinion. Peyton Bowen is an absolute game changer in the secondary and on special teams. I think he's a guy that would play right away. A lot of people, just because he's been committed forever, people are sleeping on him. But Drake Bowen is a guy that I believe can contribute. Junior Tui Halamaka is a guy that I really like coming out of high school, and he's already playing for Notre Dame as a true freshman. And I like Drake Bowen even more. I think he's more athletic. I think he's got better speed, and he's a very instinctive player. I just love what that kid can do. So he's a guy that will play as a freshman at Notre Dame. Jaden Greathouse at receiver. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, Charles Jagasaw probably won't play right away, but he could. It's just because the offensive line is so loaded. So, like I said, I know that there aren't a ton of 5-stars in this Notre Dame 23 class, but Marcus Freeman landed a ton of his top guys, and I really do see difference makers and guys that can contribute right away as true freshmen. Last question. Get some 74. Steve Wiltfong mentioned on Wiltfong's Whip Around this week that USC was still pushing to flip Elijah Page, a 4-star offensive tackle out of Arizona. Is there anything for Notre Dame to be concerned about there? I don't believe so because he chose Notre Dame over USC a while back, and nothing has changed regarding their pursuit of him, what sold him about Notre Dame over USC then. Nothing's changed. So, I mean, if anything, Notre Dame's offensive line is so loaded that he's probably not going to see the field right away, and I guess that could give him some pause, but he knew that when he committed to Notre Dame. He committed for all the right reasons. He told me that in our story at Irish Illustrated, and he continues to say all the right things in their group chat with the commits as well as to the coaching staff at Notre Dame. So I don't expect him to decommit. I expect USC and others to come after him really hard because I think he's a top 100 talent, in my opinion. I love the upside and potential there. I think he's going to be a really good player in college as long as he does what kind of I expect out of him over the next 24 months in terms of just continuing to reshape the body and continue to fill out. He's already a great-looking kid, but he's got a great mold of a kid you look for as a future tackle prospect, and he's also athletic enough to play all over the field. I mean, all over the offensive line. Just love that about him. I think Elijah Page is one of the more underrated guys in this class. So not concerned about him flipping from Notre Dame. But that wraps it up for another Notre Dame recruiting mailbag. As always, I'm Tom Loy. You can follow me on Twitter at TomLoy247. Stay locked to IrishIllustrated.com. We're going to have a ton of stuff coming out this weekend regarding the Notre Dame Marshall game, and we'll see if Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman get their first win of the season and the first win for him as the head coach of Notre Dame. But I appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next week.